Hi, welcome back. In last video, we have seen how to record your business flows using Chrome extension called BlazeMeter extension, where you'll be able to directly record and export to JMeter. In this video, we are going to see the deep dive into HTTP request sampler. Most of us will be working on web services or web application, so it is important to know about HTTP request. HTTP request is one of the most used sampler among JMeter users. Now let us dive into that. Let us create a simple test plan in JMeter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a thread group and I'm going to add a sampler called HTTP request. So this is the place where you'll be working mostly whenever you are working in web services or web application projects. So here you can change the name by editing the field name. Also you can enter some appropriate comments and you can move up and down this pane, and also similarly you can move this left side also. So always I keep this log viewer open. So whenever you click on this exclamatory icon, you can bring this up so that it will be very helpful in case we are facing any issues or if you want to see some progress, what's going on. So it will be very helpful. So I always keep this particular on whenever I am working on the sampler or debugging. So here there are two tabs you will be working. One is basic tab and advanced tab. So mostly you'll be spending time on the basic tab, but in case if something goes wrong, you might need to work on the advanced options. So now let us see what fields are mandatory basically in this request. As per the documentation, only mandatory field is usually the HTTP request type. So by default it is GET, but that's the only mandatory parameter in this sampler according to the documentation. So there is no need to configure anything in this sampler, but without configuration it will not work. So but we have to configure at least one field, say server name. But if you are using other sampler like HTTP request defaults or any other complementary samplers or elements, then you no need to enter the fields here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a request to google.com. Okay. So what I'm going to do is in the protocol I am going to enter HTTPS. So by default it will be HTTP. If you want to send a request to HTTPS, you have to mention the protocol explicitly here, HTTPS, and the server name or the IP address you are going to hit. So let us hit say google.com, or you have to enter the IP address. So no need to enter any slash like say about. So this will not work. Basically it will throw error. So only the server name or the IP address. And you have to enter the port number in the port number field, not in the server name. Server name should be only the host name, nothing apart from that. Anything if you enter it will not work. So now let us put blank value for the port number because we are going to use HTTPS, so it will go to 443. And the HTTP request method is GET because we are going to send a request because we need to get the response of google.com. So we are going to get the request, and in the path I'm not going to enter anything, and in the content encoding I'm not going to enter anything. So everything is blank or default value. And I'm going to add a listener, say view results tree, and I'm going to hit save and say HTTP demo. And in the thread group, I'm going to make sure I have entered the very less number of threads, 111, and I'm going to hit run button. So whenever you click on run, here you can see the log information. And also if you expand the request, you can see there are two requests, HTTP request 0 and HTTP request 1. So what is 0 and 1? Let us dive into that. So if you click on the request hyphen 0, and if you see the request details, it is launching https://google.com, and the response data is http 301. Basically it is saying moved permanently. So this is the response code we have received. So 301 means basically what it is meaning is the resource you are looking has been moved to a new location, which is www.google.com. So to validate this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch my browser, and I'm going to bring up the developer tools, and I'm going to click on the network tab here. And here I'm going to copy the request from the request 0 request. Right click and copy, and go to the browser and paste the URL and hit enter. Now you can see there are umpteen number of requests is getting recorded, but we don't care about other requests. Our main request we are going to look is the first request, google.com, which is https google.com as it is, and the status code is 301, and the response you can see it is failed to load response data because it is saying the document has been moved. If you see the next request, it is going to www.google.com. So this is the request it has actually sent after the redirection, and the response is the Google page. So JMeter has simulated how your browser works. JMeter is not a browser. It tries to follow the protocols defined as in the JMeter. So here the request 0 is google.com and request 1 is www.google.com. So totally two different requests. So here also we are seeing the same simulation in browser also. So basically our JMeter script works fine as intended. So this one is controlled, this redirection is controlled by the options under the methods. So there are totally 5 checkboxes, right? So here it is not a checkbox, basically kind of radio button. Okay, it is, if you cannot check everything. So basically this redirect automatically and follow redirects works as a radio button. It's not a checkbox. You cannot keep 2 checkboxes true here, right? So by default it is follow redirects. So follow redirects means for every redirects you can see a sub sampler. Okay, the parent sampler will have the last one. Whenever it is reaching the last URL, it will try to show up. But in the sub sampler you can see the redirects. So another example is what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch bit.ly/ and I'm going to say my website, basically 2mm_HUI5. So if I enter this, it will redirect to qainsights.com. Okay, let me clear this and let me enter the bit.ly URL again, bit.ly/ 2mm_HUI5, and if I enter, first it will hit the bit.ly URL. So this is my first request, bit.ly, and it says it's moved permanently. It will go to qainsights.com. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another request, and I'm going to enter in the path I'm going to enter the code, and here I'm going to enter the bit.ly and HTTPS. Okay, now this will be second request, and this is the first request. And if I run my JMeter script, you can see under HTTP request 2, there are two requests. One is it is hitting the bit.ly URL, which is redirecting me to qinsights.com. Similarly, google.com, it is redirecting to www.google.com. So now I'm going to switch on the redirect automatically for both the requests. Now if you execute, what will happen is it will directly hit the last URL wherever it is going to land. So instead of redirecting, it will hit the www.google.com and qinsights.com. So this is the purpose of follow redirects and redirect automatically. So you may wonder why you need this, right? So it depends on the use case. For example, I want to measure the time taking for the redirection. Okay, there might be multiple redirects. For example, if you click on ads, right, advertisements, so it will automatically redirect multiple times. Then it will land the advertiser page. So in that case, I want to measure what is the response time for each redirects. You can configure, but maximum, I don't know how many redirects will happen, but that is also configurable in the properties. So similar option is available in load runner as well. So load runner also you can configure the HTTP redirects. So this is the purpose of the redirect automatically follow redirects. So totally depends on your use case, but by default is follow redirects, but you can configure to redirect automatically. Okay, so now let us see other options. So let us disable this. Use keep alive. So use keep alive will help you to keep alive the connection. And other field is like if you want to send the multi-part data in the post payload, and if you want to check the browser compatible headers. So these are the optional configurations. You can do it in the HTTP request. And in the path, if you want to hit the direct path, like say google.com/about, or we can see in the google.com the pages. So there are multiple pages in google.com, right? So I want to hit directly, say advertising. So I will copy the link and I will paste it here. So basically it is going to external page. So what we can do is we can click on business about or store, no, privacy. So everything is subdomain within Google. Yeah, we can see the preferences, right? So what I can copy this link and I want to hit the preferences. So what I can do, I can say /preferences, and if I run, it will go to preferences directly. Let us clear this and hit run. So now it will go to preferences directly. So if you want to hit the URI, you can enter into the path. So all the URIs will go to the path. And just below that, there is a 3 tabs: parameters, body data, and files upload. So this is also again kind of permutation and combination. If you are entering anything in the parameters, say my age is equal to say 15, right? If you click on body data, it will not work. So if you are going to use parameters, you have to use parameters. If you want to use the body data, say I want to send the some information in JSON file, right? Like this. Now if you click on parameters, it will not enable. So basically either one only will work, but files upload you can do, but you will be able to use only body data or parameters, not both. Okay, so just to keep in mind. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the google.com to example.com, and I'm going to enter the parameters. Say my name is JMeter, and if I send this, you can see my name is equal to JMeter. So it will add the URL parameters. So let us delete this preferences and let us run it again. So as you see, it is sending the URL parameters to example.com, and the response data is this one. So similarly, you can keep on adding the data by clicking on this add button. My age, say 15, and my color gray, something like that. And if you enter run, you can see the information about what you are sending in the get request. Similarly, if I want to post the some data, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use body data. So here I'm going to send as the JSON format, say my name JMeter, and here I'm going to change it to post. So this will fail anyway, it will not accept. Okay, it is passing. So if you see the post data, you can see the value it is converting, and here the multi-part form data content type. So basically we have to configure the content type as the JSON. So what I can do is I can add some config element, header manager, and here I can say content type application slash JSON, and I'm going to uncheck this and run it. On the request body, you can see the post data, okay, and response data, you can see the value. So this is how you configure the body data so that you can send the information in your raw text basically, or you can use the parameters. So whatever however your application is being configured as written, you can change the body data or to parameters. But if you want to send some files upload, right, you can do that using the files upload. Just click on add, and you have to mention the path and the parameter name and the MIME type. The JMeter will upload the file. So this one probably we can see it in the another video. But now I hope you got the point. So here whatever you are seeing, right, not everything is mandatory. The fields are most of the fields are optional, but for the to learning purpose, we are going to configure the example.com, and you can mention the HTTP request and write path, the URI, and either parameters or body data. And if you want to redirect automatically, you can check this. Or if you want to follow the redirects, you can check this follow redirects and use keep alive always. And if you want to use multipart, you can check this. And if you want to send the browser compatible headers, you can check this box. So I hope this basic is understandable, right? So now let us go to advanced tab. So in the advanced tab, mainly you have to make sure the implementation. So by default, it will go to HTTP client for implementation. If it is Java implementation, you can select Java, but Java has its own limitation, like Kerberos or limited number of methods support. So there are a lot of drawbacks in the Java implementation. So by default, it will go to HTTP 4. So, or you can explicitly select HTTP client 4. And in the timeout, you can configure the connect timeout and response timeout. So connect timeout, for example, if I'm configuring say 5 seconds, so it is in milliseconds. So now after 5 seconds, it is not able to connect, it will fail. Similarly, if you are not able to receive the response within the 5 seconds, then the request will fail. So this information you can configure here or in the properties. But if you want to explicitly configure, you can mention it in the timeouts. Okay, now it is very critical to understand the next part, the embedded resources. So embedded resources is very, very important to understand, because this will define how you are going to simulate your request when comparing with your browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything here, and let us configure in the basic, say amazon.com, https amazon.com, and I'm going to delete everything, and I'm going to enter get here, and I'm going to remove this and here in the advanced tab, I'm going to uncheck this. First, let us run with the default settings in the basics. Click on run button. So in the response, it is saying it is throwing some error. So it is saying 503 service unavailable. So what we can do is let us say redirect automatically, and let us run it again. So it is failing now. Let us see why it is failing. Let us change it to www.amazon.com. So let us navigate manually first. So manually it is working fine. So why the HTTP is failing here? Let us see. I think some configuration we messed up, I guess. Okay, let us create a new HTTP request. And let us configure the amazon.com here. HTTPS. And let us delete this. Still failing. Okay, never mind. So what we can do, we can go to say Costco.com and let us run. Okay, it is taking more time. So what I can do is I can enter just Costco.com here. And let me remove the www and hit run. Okay, actually it is www only. So why it is not working here? Let us debug. Or we can go to any other website, say store.google.com. Hit run. Okay, yeah, now this is working fine. Okay, now sorry for the hiccups. So here if you see the HTTP request sampler result, you can see the load time is 565 milliseconds. Okay, so basically it is just sending the request, and the response data you can see it here. And if you click on the HTML download resources, you can see the web page. But the website, any website if you take, it is comprising of images, CSS, JavaScript, logos, PNG files. A lot of resources makes the website usable, right? So JMeter is not a browser. It will not execute like a browser. So it is our responsibility to make sure what is in scope for us to test, whether you want to behave like a browser or we are just testing the server performance. So instead of the browser rendering or browser load time, we are just going to test the backend. Okay, so here let me hit the developer tools and let me refresh. Okay, now if you see, there are a lot of requests being received from the server, right? And here you can see there are 47 requests and almost 951 KB transfer, 6.3 MB resources, finish time. So it's keep on loading. If you see, if I scroll down also, again the lot of resources will be getting loaded. And if you want to simulate as like in the browser, right? So here the DOM time is 3.78 and load time is 4.93 seconds. But in our HTTP sampler, you can see the load time is 565 milliseconds. So it's totally conflicts, right? But this is the server side response time. This is the actual how the browser is getting rendered. So now if you want to simulate as similar to the browser, what you can do is you have to go to the advanced tab and you have to enable the retrieve all embedded resources. Okay, so by default, it has a certain parallel downloads. So every browser comes with the parallel downloads. So that you can configure in the browser level, but by default, each browser behaves has some certain numbers. You can also configure the parallel downloads some number. So, but you can always go with the default because most of the user don't change the parallel downloads unless it is very much unless they're developer or some debugging they are doing. So that's why I always configure the default parallel downloads as 6. I don't change this number. Similarly, you can also not to change, but if you have any specific testing you are doing with the parallel downloads, you can configure the number here. So now I am checking this retrieve all embedded resources, and I'm going to run my test plan again. Now definitely there will be an increase in the response time. And also if you expand this, you can see that there are a lot of requests 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till 18. But the browser has 48, but JMeter has loaded only 18. That's what it tried to simulate, but it will not simulate as in browser because JMeter is not a browser. Okay. So now if you go back to text view and click on HTTP request sampler time, you can see the load time is 3.2 seconds. So it is almost similar to the DOM content load and almost 1 second less than the load time. So if you click on each individual request, you can see the load time of each request. So basically this is JavaScript, this is jQuery and Angular and so on. So this is the PNG file, this is a PNG file, this is the store.google.com, the main domain. So this is how you will be able to simulate the real browser. I mean, not as exactly as a browser, but you're trying to be like a browser. Okay. So if you want to configure, say 8, right? And I'm going to run again. So now this will try to download the parallel downloads is 8, but it is almost similar to the previous request. So let us increase this number, say 10. I think there is a maximum number is there. So you have to check in Google for each browser how many, what is the parallel downloads. Okay. So that is why you need to play with the number to identify the right parallel downloads. But I always urge you to stick to the parallel downloads as 6. So now you got the idea, right? Why we are going to enable the retrieve and what is the purpose. So totally depends on your requirements. If you want to test all the downloads, all the files, then you can enable that. Otherwise you can simply uncheck it. Okay, now similarly there is an option if you want to configure the URLs must match. For example, I want to retrieve the embedded resources from the main URL, then you can enter the URL must match so that it will download only the resources from the URLs you have entered here. And if you are in corporate network, if you want to configure some proxy server for your request, you can do that under the proxy server here. You have to enter the server name, proxy server name, port number and your user credentials so that it will configure the proxy for you. And source address. So this source address will help you to configure the IP spoofing. If you want to spoof some of the IP address based on your IPv4 or IPv6 or some device IP like Ethernet or wireless LAN. So if you want to configure some of the source address, you can do that using the source address field, and you can configure the type of IP you want to use. But people usually don't do that unless they are doing some IP spoofing, but it's good to know. Okay, and under optional task, there is a checkbox called save response as MD5. So if this is selected, the whole response will not be stored. Instead, it will store some 32 character MD5 hash, will be calculated and stored. And this will be very useful if you are testing the large amounts of data. So again, I have never tested this, but it's always good to know. I think I covered everything, I believe. right? Yeah, I think I have covered everything. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And in the next video, we'll be seeing the complementary samplers like request defaults, HTTP header manager, auth manager. So we'll be seeing those so that we'll be done with the HTTP request. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.
If you like my dad's videos, please subscribe to QA Insights channel.